Hi guys, back again. This is day number 7, so officially been doing this for a week now. Feels like a hell of a lot longer. I don't know about you guys, but it feels like it's been a long time for me. I was just looking back over my day 1 video yesterday, and yeah, it was tough. It was a really tough watch, but in a way, I'm really glad that I did it. Because it gives me kind of like something to measure my present mood against. I mean, one of the things I find with depression is you lose all kind of perspective on it. So a bad day is just a bad day, and it's all you're ever going to remember. You're just going to remember the bad days. Whereas in between some of the bad days, you could have good days. Even within a bad day, you can have good patches. You can have ups and downs, and all around. It's a magical mystery tour of the mind. Um, but yeah, so today I've been feeling quite bad, and I'm just trying to take a step back and be mindful of the fact that last week I was in a lot more fragile state than I am today, even though in my mind today it was like one of the worst days I've ever had. So it's mind. I mean, it's worth thinking about. If from a day-to-day basis you're kind of thinking to yourself, every day is getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. It can be worth doing something simple like journaling, writing a diary, blogging, vlogging like I'm doing here. And it's a really good record, and it's a really good way for you to look back over the course of several days or weeks and just see what your patterns are and kind of develop them. So you know what to expect, how to deal with them, the good things that have happened as well as the bad. So it's kind of like a permanent record for you to kind of remind yourself that, maybe it wasn't all bad. Maybe there were some good things. But yeah, I said that I felt quite bad today. I do. I feel quite low. I think that's precipitated over the fact that over the last 3 days, I've had an appointment with my psychiatrist, and today I've had two hospital appointments in different hospitals. And the thing about the psychiatrist appointment that he's a really good guy. We really get on well. He's like he's been great for me. He's really looked after me and kind of looked out for my needs and kind of made sure I was okay. But on Tuesday, for the first time, we really kind of broached the subject of whether or not it's looking more and more likely that I have treatment-resistant depression, which, as the name suggests, I mean, it's not impossible to deal with, it's not impossible to live with, but it is generally harder to kind of, treat going forward. So we discussed some long-term options, and those were kind of around things like, lithium was mentioned. He also came up with some kind of really funky-sounding alternative therapies, like there's some kind of electro device machine you can get that shoots electric current into your brain. It's not ECT, electroconvulsion therapy. It's a really kind of like low voltage. You can do it at home. It's that kind of safe, really. So, but it's an option. Apparently, there's really good results coming out. It's called Alpha Stim. Also, he mentioned ketamine. So, ketamine traditionally has been viewed as kind of like a recreational drug that's been misused a lot. So there's a lot of stigma attached around ketamine. Everyone thinks it's just a horse tranquilizer that people use every now and then to get high, which they did, and do still. But they've been doing a lot of research with it, and also a lot of other kind of recreational drugs. I'm actually going to do a whole video on psychedelics and how they're coming back into the psychiatric world as, maybe they are going to be the next step in treating mental health issues. So the really promising results so far in Imperial College, and I think in London here, and Johns Hopkins University have been doing really good research into things like magic mushrooms, the active ingredient of that, psilocybin. They've been finding amazing. It treats depression really, really well. You can have like one dose of psilocybin, and it kind of puts your depression into remission for some people. I mean, it's still early days, but the results they've had have been amazing. They've been really, really good. So, yeah, I'm thinking about doing a video just purely around psychedelics, because obviously a person in my situation, I'm always on the lookout for something that's going to help. And and I've kind of stuck on psychedelics. I've been doing all the research, I've been looking into it, I've been trying to find out everything I can about it, because the first thing people think about when you mention psychedelics is, oh, that's a recreational drug, it's bad, it's evil, nobody should be doing it. It's like, and it really isn't that at all. I've looked into the history from like when it was created, things like psilocybin was discovered, things like LSD when it was first invented. I mean, these weren't drugs that were being used, by recreational drug users, drug abusers. They were being used for scientific research back in the, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. Obviously, the 60s, that's when things kind of kicked off in America with the hippie movement, and there was like a counterculture against the Vietnam War, and it kind of, America started this whole kind of propaganda war against psychedelic drugs, and that's why they become demonized. And but that's not what this video is about, so I'm going to save that for another video. But if you're interested, let me know, send me a comment or something, just let me know, and I'll do that video at some point. So yeah, like I say, I was talking to my psychiatrist. Ketamine came up as one of the treatments going forward that have been getting really, really good results. But at the same time, it was kind of sad, because I thought, I was hoping to get that one thing that would work for me. So I've been through, several different types of antidepressants. I'm on anti-anxiety medications. I've had all sorts of different types of therapy, and they all work in, various different ways, but ultimately they don't kind of help in the end of the day. It's just like depression. It's always there, and there's always an undercurrent for me of dread. And that's where my anxiety kicks in. So there's this kind of like, every day I feel like this overwhelming sense that something really, really bad's going to happen, and I can't shake it no matter what I do. It's just there all the time. And that brings me to another subject that I want to talk about. So the 2 hospital appointments that I had today, they were for very innocuous things. They weren't very serious. It was like little niggly things that I haven't really kind of got around to dealing with for the last few years. So one of them was with a hepatologist. I've got, it looks like I've got non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which sounds a lot worse than it is. It's like, apparently it's really, really common in men, kind of in their 50s, 60s. I'm getting into my, 40s now. So, yeah, it's not that unexpected, and it's not something that's going to affect my life greatly, unless, fatty liver disease can progress, and it can progress to scarring of the liver, and then cirrhosis of the liver, and then you're kind of in trouble. But we discussed all these kind of options today with the hepatologist. It was really good. But he pointed out quite a few glaringly obvious things to me, things I knew, things I know. I'm not stupid. I know I'm overweight. I'm actually, clinically I'm obese, which isn't a surprise. I've known that. I've checked my BMI. I'm really kind of aware of my weight, and it has gone up a lot over the last couple of years. So yeah, the doctor made it quite clear that, exercise, healthy eating, those are good options for me if I want to kind of cut off this fatty liver situation. That would help. I mean, obviously it would help. I know that. I'm not stupid. I know I've been piling on a bit of timber. I know that I'm not doing the right things. I know I'm not making the right choices. But yeah, that's sometimes what depression is. Depression kind of, it feels almost like it robs you of your choices, that you don't feel motivated enough to want to try even to help yourself in situations like that. And I'm going to get onto something else about that later on, but I just want to mention the other appointment that I had was with a neurologist. So I've been having a problem with one of my legs, just getting a random dead leg every now and then when I'm walking. It just, it's something I can live with. It's not life changing or altering. But she did a few exams and examined me today, and she's sending me off for an MRI on my lumbar spine. She thinks I might have spinal stenosis, which again sounds a lot worse than it probably is. It's just where the discs in your spine are kind of squeezing down on nerves, and it's causing like problems in your limbs and extremities and things like that, and your lower back. Again, it's something that can be dealt with, and again, the obvious, like my weight's not helping in that situation. But I just want to get on to the main subject. I've waffled on around this subject, and I'm going to come into it now. So the subject I wanted to talk about today was just the mind-body connection. Because I think for a lot of people, there's still a kind of division there. There's still a very kind of there's a mental health and then there's your physical health, and they kind of aren't connected for a lot of people. Whereas for me personally, and this is just my own personal opinion, like I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist. I've done a lot of research. I've done I've read a lot of books. I've done a lot of research on the internet. I've watched a lot of videos. I've watched a lot of TED Talks. And my takeaway from the whole thing is that they definitely are connected. Like your mental health and your physical health, of course they are. I mean, when you really look at it, it's obvious. Like they have to be connected. And what I mean by connected is, typically that kind of sentiment of healthy body, healthy mind, I 100% think that is true to a certain degree. Obviously, depression is an illness that no matter how kind of healthy you are, sometimes it still affects you. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Being healthy in body, it doesn't hurt. Basically, it's going to do nothing but help you in the long run. And when you think about it as well, you think about when you're ill, you're miserable anyway. You're never happy when you're ill. Nobody wants to be ill. When you're ill and you're depressed, that's like you're unhappy, but to the 10th degree. So it makes your depression even worse, even deeper, and it gets you into this negative cycle again. So depression's all about negative cycles, thinking patterns, behavior patterns, and yeah, with illness, it's kind of like a self-feeding thing. So you get ill. I get ill a lot, and I think it's a lot of it is to do with my attitude almost. Like when you're depressed, you're down. I think it has a direct effect on your body. Your immune system's lower. You get ill a lot more, and when you do get ill, the illnesses tend to be more intense and they last longer. And that's not me trying to get sympathy. I'm not talking about man flu. I'm talking about like if I get a cold, it is really like bad for me. I don't know why. I'm not trying to get sympathy from anybody. I'm just saying I get a lot of colds. I get a lot of chest infections and things like that. And they wipe me out. They really do. And I think that's tied in with my depression. Interestingly enough, I'm going to talk about a book now, another book. I mentioned Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl yesterday. I'm reading a book at the moment called The Body Keeps the Score, and I have to get the guy's name up because I can't pronounce it. I think he's Dutch. Let me just... This is so unprofessional. I'd never make it in TV, being so unprofessional. But the book is called The Body Keeps the Score, and it's essentially it's by a man called Bessel van der Kolk. Bessel van der Kolk. And I'm going to put a link in the description below if anyone wants to check it out on Amazon. It's a really great book. I think he's a psychotherapist or a psychoanalyst or a doctor. He's some kind of doctor anyway. And he's been doing research for the last 30, 40 years into trauma. And not just trauma as in, physical trauma. He's like focusing on mental trauma. So things like PTSD, complex PTSD, child abuse, neglect, anything that can create kind of bad trauma in your mind. And it's like a step-by-step like history of trauma, like from when they didn't even know what PTSD was. Back in World War One, they called it shell shock, that soldiers were coming back and they were distant and they were just disconnected from life, and they couldn't talk about their experiences. People didn't know what that was back then, and then he first kind of came across it when he was treating Vietnam veterans that had come back from the war. They were completely like destroyed mentally, and they were really failed by the American government. And I'm not slamming the American government here, but they were really kind of like abandoned, and no one wanted to know that like these people had come back. They'd fought this war that was pointless, a lot of people thought, and they'd seen and done terrible things. They were forced to do and see terrible things, and they were affected by that, but no one knew what to do with these guys. So these guys were coming back and they were traumatized. And it was only around, the 70s or so where people started thinking, well, what is this? Is this like, this must be, we must be able to like find what this is and treat it. And that's really where the first work with PTSD came in. And then he goes into lots of other case histories about, various traumas that people go through. So, things like severe accidents, violent assaults, sexual abuse, child physical abuse, emotional abuse, child neglect, and all these things that they have an effect on our minds. And he then goes one step further and says that it's not just an effect on your mind, but prolonged long-term abuse and trauma, it affects you physiologically as well. And that may sound crazy. It may sound like mind over matter. It sounds really weird, but it's not when you think about it. For me, as an example, that underlying sense of dread that I have all day long, it means that my fear response is heightened. My startle response is heightened all the time. I'm always ready for action, even though there never is any action. But yeah, my body's primed and ready to go, and that means it has to produce more stress hormones, so things like cortisol, adrenaline, and those things are only supposed to be around temporarily. They're supposed to, like, in really serious situations where it's like fight or flight, that's where you're looking for your stress hormones to kick in, give you that little burst of energy to get you out of a situation or to fight your way through it. They're not supposed to be hanging around for no reason, just swimming around. Your body's not designed to cope with that kind of, like overexposure to stress hormones. It just isn't. So what you find is people who suffer with anxiety, complex PTSD, they do become physiologically changed because their body has to adapt to the fact that, these things are happening. It really is happening. And he even goes into like really interesting stuff about memory and how memories can trigger the same stress reaction that the original event actually caused. So even just remembering, like 20, 30 years later, people are remembering incidents that happened to them when they were children or when they were in war. And it brings on the same physiological effects that the original attack or whatever the event was. And I find it really fascinating. It's a really, really, really good book. It kind of delves into all of it. Towards the end, I haven't got to the end yet, but towards the end it's dealing with treatments, and he's come up with all these revolutionary ways of treating trauma, and it sounds like it's going to be, I'm looking forward to getting to the end of the book because I think I can get a lot out of that book. I would really recommend it. It's called The Body Keeps the Score. Just an interesting read. If you do have an interest in trauma, it's really, really good. And that brings me back to my own situation. So I definitely think that your mind and your body are connected in such an intricate way that even we don't understand it. And it makes me feel quite sad because I know today was a kind of a wake-up call for me, but it was a wake-up call that I knew anyway. I know all the things that the doctor told me. I know that I'm overweight, and I know that I'm not making the right choices, and it's just made me realise that when I left hospital the first time, I was determined to fix myself. I wanted to cure my depression, so I was finding and trying to do all these different treatments and therapies, anything I could do that I thought might work, that might be that magic pill that would just go, that magic click in your head that you go, this is what I need. So I was doing all sorts of random stuff like, flotation therapy, acupuncture, reflexology, acupressure, gong baths, sound baths, all sorts of different therapies. I've mentioned schema therapy, talk therapy, compassion-based therapy. I was doing a lot of stuff, and it was all with the aim of just finding that one thing that could work for me that would just end it all, and I'd be fine, I'd be normal again. And I've just realised today that looking back over all that experience, the one thing that I never did was think about my physical health during that entire period. It was all about my mental health. And it's funny, I've got a running joke with my psychiatrist, actually. He mentioned, like, nearly 2 years ago now, when I first met him, he mentioned that yoga is really good as a way of helping with mental health issues and relaxing you, and it's really good. Like, it's been proven to be quite a good technique. It's been proven to be really, really helpful. And it's something I've never wanted to do yoga. I've never been interested. And it's partly because it's really embarrassing, but I'm worried that I'll fart in the middle of a yoga session and it'll just embarrass me and I'll be mortified. That is a genuine fear that I have. I'm not joking. And also, as I said earlier, depression just deprives you of your will to do stuff like that. So, like, I know that I've been, neglecting myself. I've got really high cholesterol. I've got this back thing now. I've got like a hiatus hernia. I've got like really bad gout at the moment, which I thought only really old men that drank port got, and I'm a wreck basically. And it's only today that I realised that I haven't been looking after myself as a whole. I've been focusing on one aspect of my life, my mental health, and I've been taking all the medication, I've been doing all the therapy, I've been kind of doing all sorts of alternative therapies. The one thing I haven't done, and the one thing that may help, which I haven't done, I haven't given myself the chance to do it, is to look after myself physically, to get my body in shape, to, get active, to be active. I mean, I know I've seen scientific studies that have been done where it proves that exercise helps release endorphins and it does help with your overall mood. I know that. But I think it took today seeing a doctor and the doctor actually being quite serious and saying, look, just get a grip on it. It can be done. It's not out of my control. If anything, it's completely under my control. I have the choice to be healthier, both in mind and in body. And I think when we ignore one, we're doing a disservice to the other. I think that we should be viewing ourselves as a whole rather than working on our minds and our bodies, or our bodies and not our minds. I think it's really, really like the connections are there. But I'm going to leave it there because I've gone on for quite a bit longer than I thought I was going to do. I hope people may have got something out of this. I don't know. I'm doing these videos because, partly from, as I say, for myself, so I've got a record. I can go back and look at things and say, oh, maybe it wasn't that bad. Today felt like shit to me because of the realizations and the thoughts that have been turning around my head. But when I think back to last week, I was a wreck last week. I mean, I was really low. I was rock bottom. And I don't think I'm there today. So, I mean, that in itself is, it's good enough for me for now. In the meantime, I'm going to have serious think about doing yoga. Lay off the beans if I do. But yeah, like I say, I'm going to put a link for the book, Body Keeps the Score, down below if anyone's interested in reading that. Like I say, really good book, just in terms of the history of how they came around to developing the theory of post-traumatic stress and the treatments and things like that. So yeah, give that a check if you want. If I could ask and be really cheeky, if you're watching this video, if you haven't already, could you please subscribe to my channel? I welcome any comments or feedback. Help me improve my performances, I guess. I don't know. Just let me know. But I'll leave it there for now, guys. Thanks for listening, and thanks for being there, and take care of yourselves.